Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Joy Marsh, the author of Hunger, Hope, and Healing, a yoga approach to reclaiming your relationship with your body and food. Okay, let's drop into the conversation. Today's topic is self-care is not an act of selfishness. Now, if we look at this in the life stages that we've moved through into adulthood, I think we can really understand where we came from and how we got to be where we are and what we can do about it. So first, we're born into a stage of life where we are completely dependent upon our care providers. That is an utter state of vulnerability and helplessness, and it's totally appropriate. And actually, as adults, we find it adorable that these infants are needing us so much. And the way that they express themselves, the way that they coo and caw, and they make their little bobbles, and the way that they drool, and everything that they do, we find to be adorable. Nature saw to it that the adult care provider of the infant could completely accept and even cherish and feel very warm-hearted about the utter helplessness of the human infant. And yet, as adults, we have a highly allergic reaction to being the one who is helpless or dependent or in need. So we're going to come back to that thought in a bit. Okay, so there we are, born in this state of helplessness, and we have to broadcast our needs. And we are completely dependent upon and vulnerable to how the adult care providers in our environment are going to respond to us. And if it's not adult care providers, sometimes it's our siblings, or it might be like a teacher or a neighbor. How are these other people going to be responding to our broadcast of our needs? And at this stage of development, when we're in this vulnerability, we have to broadcast for hunger and satiation, for the need for connection, and the need for solace, or the need for warmth or cooling off. We have to broadcast for everything. And as we're broadcasting that, how we're being responded to is making an impression on us. And we're picking up on those responses, not in terms of language or cognition, because we don't have language or cognition yet. We're picking up on it in terms of the sense impression or the felt sense of how other people are responding. So are they responding warmly? Are they responding empathetically? Do they respond in a timely manner? Is their rhythm helpful to us? Does their rhythm seem resonant with ours? Do they come across as impatient or overwhelmed or stressed or anxious, or like we are an extra burden on them? Or they're confused. They don't know how to respond to us. They didn't have good parenting themselves, and yet here they are in the situation. In all of those iterations of how someone is responding, we're getting a felt sense of what it is to have needs and how to broadcast those needs. We're also learning when not to. We're learning that pretty quickly because the nervous system has to adapt to the environment in which we are born. Then we're going to go through some other life stages, like we become a toddler, we learn to crawl, we learn to walk, we learn to talk, and we go through these life stages where we are meant to keep evolving. First, we have the pre-personal life stage. Then we have a sense of the personal and the interpersonal life stage. We learn about having an intrapersonal life stage. And then we learn to have this transpersonal life where we get to consider, what are we beyond this personhood? What are we beyond just our job or our function or our label? What more is there to us? That's called the transpersonal life stage. Well, lots of us in Hunger, Hope, and Healing, and anybody who's struggling with an addiction, a compulsive behavior, a self-soothing strategy that's become self-harming, what happened for us is that we did not get to move through the stages of self and other into that transpersonal at all. We're stuck back in an undifferentiated, non-individuated sense of ourselves. We could call it codependence or enmeshment, where in fact our needs and the needs of others are intermingled. We've learned to forego our own needs on behalf of others. We've learned to prioritize their needs, not our own. We've learned to sense their needs without them vocalizing it. We've learned to respond to their needs. We've learned to step in when there's a vacancy of leadership in a social setting or in a family system. We've learned to deny or forego what we need so that other people are going to be more comfortable and less likely to cause conflict or upset. We've learned to do all of that way before we were adults. And it went through these different stages of development where in infancy, one response, in toddlerhood, a response. In other words, it's deeply conditioned in us. So then we come into this phase of our life where we're like, I want to get my health back. I want to overcome this diet mentality, this yo-yo dieting, the compulsive eating, emotional eating, binge eating. I want to overcome this. I'm not living my best life. And let's say you come to work with me at Hunger, Hope, and Healing, and I say, terrific, wonderful, astounding, I'm ready to help you. And it's going to need you to create some clear boundaries in your relationships. Part of what's going to happen is that we're going to clean up the shores of your riverbanks so that you have a sense of your own direction. And so this is going to need a reevaluation of who you are in relationship to others and what needs you're reflexively meeting for them and therefore denying or foregoing for yourself. We're going to take a look at that together. So as this is happening, it's highly possible that there's going to be a period of discomfort. It's going to feel uncomfortable and unusual to start prioritizing your own needs. And what can happen is old messages of that being selfish are going to pop up. Now, those messages might have been things you heard actually in childhood or adolescence or at other times, such as when people tell you that you're being selfish when you have a poorly timed emotion in childhood, or you're being selfish if you want more food at the dinner table, or you're being selfish if you won't share something with your sibling, right? And you get these messages of selfishness if you have a need. If you have just like a basic need as a child, those needs are, it's up to our parents and our care providers to help us navigate those needs because those needs are like primal to us. We don't know much of what we're doing. We have to get mentoring and role modeling and support. But if we're just told that it's selfish, we're lacking the mentoring, role modeling, and support. And so we can internalize that message that my needs are selfish and that I am selfish. And then we don't want to be that because it comes with judgment. It comes with, that's what you would not want to be. You know that for sure. You've learned that in the social setting. So we start foregoing our needs, denying our needs, suppressing our emotions, overriding our instincts, disconnecting from our body, disconnecting from our sensations, this entire disconnect. And then we find out that that's actually pretty painful. And we want to get free from that and kind of re-inhabit our body again and discover our health and wholeness. And it's going to require a recalibration of our boundaries and our sense of ourself, how we prioritize our needs, listening to the body, listening to your appetite, learning about your body intelligence. All of that is going to be like a renaissance of sorts, that you'll be able to come into a clear sense of your vitality. You will find your way. But in the beginning, you're going to end up with these, what I call bumper stickers of belief systems. And some of those bumper stickers, it's like you see it on every car when you're driving around. That's why I call them bumper stickers. They're these belief systems in your mind that have been there for so long, and it starts to become more and more obvious as you try to overcome them. And one of them is self-care is selfish. That's going to start coming up and intruding on you as you step into setting a boundary, or as you step into creating some white space for yourself, or a timeout to nurture yourself, as you claim some self-care. At the same time, those bumper stickers, those belief systems are going to come up to try to derail you or intrude on you, because what you learned a long time ago was to forego or deny your needs, because that was going to make it safer for you. And so when this little ogre, I sometimes say, looking over your shoulder is like, oh, don't do that. That would be considered selfish. When that voice starts to pop up, you can think to yourself, this is one of my oldest, most protective parts, and it does not want me to put myself in harm's way. However, I am now becoming more mature and intelligent than this older, more primitive thought. I learned that thought. I learned that belief. I felt that was true. I lived it for decades, but now I'm outgrowing that because I can see from my neocortex, I can see from a wiser place that actually self-care is essential, because without it, I actually can't care for others. We cannot tune into the other if we're in a enmeshed, codependent, mingled tangle of needs. We actually can't tune into the other and really be there for them. So that self and other differentiation that has to happen for us to develop, it becomes a gateway to the most deep capacity for empathy and resonance and intimacy. when we actually have a sense of self and other, we then grow into this transpersonal self where it's like self unto self. I see myself in you and I see you in me. Whether it's what is beautiful or difficult, I'm seeing us. And I can do that because I've had a chance to establish myself, capital S, and I can see yourself, capital S. And we're no longer dependent upon in a codependent and meshed sense, but we recognize our interdependence. So this comes in stages of development that we move through in recovery, and in recovery from an addiction or a compulsion, but also recovery of our life. You're moving in these different stages of development. So with that in mind, let's take just a final look at one of my students, what she has to say about this. So listen in. I was just talking about our current topic in phase 2 about not foregoing ourselves. I wonder if you have any response to that as we step in here today.
I think it's kind of the underlying message a lot about what Hunger, Hope, and Healing is really about, is thinking about yourself. Not, that doesn't mean to be selfish, but it just means, in order to be there for other people, you need to be there for yourself first. And I know for a lot of us in the group, that was a hard thing to get that message, to kind of understand that.
Yeah, because you had decades before we got together.
Right.
Patterns that go on for decades they're hard to change, but they're not impossible to change. Yeah, so patterns that go on for decades are hard to change, but they're not impossible to change, because as you're recovering, as we work together, as you're recovering and you're moving through these stages, you are literally creating a state shift for your brain. You're developing neurological pathways that are stabilizing. So you become more and more capable of a view that is your life stage and your biological, mental, psychological, intellectual, and spiritual health. It's not that you're living with the brain state that brought you into addiction, nor the one that's been suffering in the addiction or the compulsion. You're actually outgrowing that brain state. And to do that, it requires support and mentoring and practices that can help you to rewire your brain, essentially, which is where yoga and mindfulness come in. So self-care is not selfish. It never has been. It won't be. And when you have enough sense of self, capital S, and your life is balanced and you feel this sense of wholeness and health, there'll be times when you can appropriately sacrifice or forego your needs respectfully in the right setting at the right time. And it won't feel like resentment is going to come around the corner in a moment. And that's going to happen because you've established a baseline health and an inner reservoir of vitality and capacity. And you know who you are. You know in your deepest, you are not what shame has been telling you you are. Okay, let me know if you have any questions or comments. You can put them below the video. I look forward to seeing you next time. And as always, please take care of yourselves. Oh, and like and subscribe on YouTube. That makes a difference. Thank you, everyone. Namaste.